My name is Claire Whitaker. I am 29 years old, and until a few months ago, I still believed that if you loved your family hard enough, they would eventually love you the same way back. I lived alone in Bellevue, Washington, worked a steady compliance job, paid my own bills on time, and somehow still found room to keep rescuing the people who raised me. That Tuesday night, I was halfway through answering work emails when my phone lit up with a video message from my older sister. For 1 second, I thought maybe she was finally reaching out to apologize for not inviting me to her birthday the week before. Instead, I pressed play and felt my whole body go cold. The video was taken inside a crowded bar, all dim lights and laughter. And then I heard my mother's voice clear as day. She was laughing about the $3,000 I had sent her without even asking why she needed it. My father called me their walking ATM. Then my sister, sounding amused and completely unbothered, said all they had to do was pretend they cared about me and I would keep paying. 3 seconds later, the video disappeared from the chat, but not before I saved it. I must have watched those 28 seconds 50 times that night, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping there was some context that could make it less cruel, less real. There was not. By 2 in the morning, I was sitting on my couch with 6 months of bank statements open on my laptop. And for the first time in years, I stopped asking how much my family needed from me and started asking a very different question. How much of my life had they already taken? By sunrise, I made one decision, and when they realized what I had done, the panic started almost immediately. By morning, I had canceled the transfer I was supposed to send my father that Friday. $2,800 for what he had called an urgent roof repair. The night before, I would have sent it without hesitation. That morning, I stared at the pending payment for a full minute, then deleted it, and felt something shift inside me. It was not peace. Not yet. It was closer to nausea mixed with clarity. For 5 years, I had been the reliable one, the useful one, the daughter who never let a call go unanswered when the words emergency, bill, or family came up. It had started when I was 24 and landed my first real job after college. I still remember my mother telling me that families survive by carrying each other through hard seasons. My father said I was the only one with a stable head on my shoulders. My sister always had a reason she was temporarily behind: a bad manager, a delayed paycheck, a rough month, a plan that almost worked. I believed all of them because I wanted to believe I came from people who loved me, not people who calculated me. So I helped with medical copays, utility bills, rent gaps, car repairs, and credit card balances that were always described as one-time problems. I told myself I was being generous. Looking back, I was being trained. After canceling the transfer, I sent one simple text to the family group chat. Unexpected expenses came up on my end. I cannot send money this month. For a while, nothing happened. Then my phone started vibrating so hard it rattled across the kitchen counter. My mother called first. She sounded breathless and wounded, asking if something terrible had happened and reminding me that she had a specialist appointment coming up. My father followed with a message that was not worried at all, only angry. He wrote that real family does not disappear when people are counting on them. Then my sister sent a fake, light-hearted text with a laughing emoji, asking if I was seriously going to leave everyone hanging over one bad month. I read every message without replying. What stunned me was not the pressure itself. It was how quickly they all moved to the exact same point. None of them asked if I was okay. None of them asked what kind of unexpected expense I was facing. None of them asked whether I needed help. Their panic was not about losing me. It was about losing access to me. By noon, my mother had called 5 times, my father twice, and my sister had sent 3 follow-up texts that got meaner each time. I should have felt guilty. A part of me did. But every time that guilt tried to rise, I heard her voice again from that bar. Pretend we care, and she will keep paying. That sentence did something irreversible to me. It took every old excuse I had built for them and set it on fire. And once I saw that pattern clearly, I knew canceling one transfer was not enough. I had to find out how much of my life had been quietly siphoned away while I was still calling it love. That afternoon, I logged out of work early and opened every financial account I had. Not because I was calm, but because I knew if I let myself sit with the betrayal too long, I might do what I had always done and talk myself back into forgiving them before I even understood what they had done. I started with my checking account, then my savings, then the credit card I mostly used for groceries and gas. At first, nothing looked shocking. There were the usual transfers I already knew about, the ones I had agreed to because someone in my family always seemed to be one disaster away from collapse. But once I stopped reading the statements like a daughter and started reading them like a stranger, the details changed. There were charges I did not recognize, small ones at first, a clothing order, a beauty supply purchase, a ticketing charge that looked like it came from a concert platform. Separately, none of them were large enough to trigger alarm. Together, they formed a pattern that made my stomach tighten. They had been spaced out just enough to disappear into the rest of my spending. I pulled up old emails and found receipts attached to purchases I had never made, all sent to an inbox folder I rarely checked. Then I searched my messages and remembered something that made me feel even sicker. 2 years earlier, when my sister claimed her phone had died and she needed to order something urgently, I had handed over one of my card numbers and told her to use it just once. I never checked whether once had stayed once. It had not. By the time I finished tracing the unauthorized charges, the total was just over $7,000. I was still staring at the screen when a text came in from Ethan Mercer, a cousin I only heard from around holidays or funerals. He asked if I had really agreed to co-sign something for my father because he had overheard a conversation that did not sound right. My hands went cold. I called him immediately, and he hesitated before telling me my father had apparently been bragging that he knew how to get approved as long as he used the name of the child with the clean credit. I did not even thank him before I hung up and pulled my credit report. That was when the story stopped being painful and became dangerous. There were accounts on there I had never seen before. 2 personal loans and 1 line of credit. All opened within the last 18 months, all tied to my identity. One of them listed me as the primary borrower. Another showed me as a guarantor. I called the lender on the first account and forced myself to sound steady. The representative emailed me a copy of the application. My name was on it. So was a signature that looked enough like mine to fool a machine, but not enough to fool me. I checked the next file, then the next. Same thing. Slightly different slant. Same lie. I sat there in absolute silence, hearing nothing but the hum of my refrigerator and my own pulse in my ears. It was not one desperate mistake. It was repeated, planned, comfortable. I went back into my email and started searching every word I could think of. Roof, doctor, emergency, loan, help, family. One thread finally stopped me cold. It was an old forwarded chain my mother must have accidentally sent me months ago and then buried under newer messages. At first glance it looked harmless. Then I read it more carefully. She had written to my sister that asking me for too much at once would make me nervous, so they needed to give it a couple of weeks between requests. My sister replied that medical reasons worked best because I always got emotional when health was involved. There was even a line about keeping the amounts uneven so it felt real. I read that email 3 times, then pushed my chair back so fast it scraped across the floor. For years, I had thought I was responding to hardship. In reality, I had been responding to scheduling. I spent the next hour saving everything: screenshots, PDFs, receipts, statements, loan documents, email chains. I backed them up to cloud storage and then to an external drive because suddenly paranoia felt less like fear and more like common sense. When I finally looked up, the sun had gone down and my apartment windows had turned black. I had numbers now. Over $45,000 in direct support in the last year alone. More than $150,000 over 5 years if I counted the transfers, the balances I paid off, the unauthorized charges, and the fraud attached to my name. I wish I could say I cried. I did not. I just sat there with my phone in my hand, staring at the family group chat, realizing that the people I had trusted most had not only laughed at me behind my back, they had built a system around me. And once I understood that, I knew the next step could not be emotional. It had to be precise. I did not invite them to my apartment. I did not want them in my space. And I did not want a private room where they could corner me, cry on cue, or rewrite what happened after the fact. So that Saturday, I told them to meet me at a busy coffee shop in downtown Bellevue. I arrived early, chose a table near the center of the room, and kept every document I had printed inside a plain black folder on the chair beside me. When they walked in together, they looked almost normal. My mother wore the same worried expression she used whenever she wanted sympathy before anyone even knew the facts. My father had that stiff, irritated posture that meant he had already decided I was the problem. My sister came in last, sunglasses on, acting bored, like this was all an inconvenience she planned to charm her way out of. None of them knew I had stopped coming there as a daughter looking for answers. I was there as the person holding the evidence. My mother sat down first and reached for my hand. "Claire, honey, what is this? You've been scaring us." I pulled my hand back and placed my phone on the table. "You can stop pretending now." My sister's face changed first, just a flicker, but I caught it. Then I pressed play. The bar noise filled the space between us. Laughter, glasses clinking. My mother's voice, bright and amused, talking about the $3,000 I had sent without asking questions. My father calling me their walking ATM. Then my sister, casual and cruel, saying that all they had to do was pretend they cared, and I would keep paying. I let the whole thing run. No one spoke for a second after it ended. Then my mother gave a shaky little laugh and said, "Claire, that was a joke. You know how people talk when they've been drinking." My father leaned back in his chair and scoffed. "You dragged us down here over that? Over one stupid conversation?" My sister folded her arms. "I sent that by accident and deleted it right away. You were not supposed to take it so seriously." I looked at her for a moment. "Not supposed to?" I said. "That's your defense?" My father cut in before she could answer. "You are acting paranoid. Families vent. That does not mean anything." I opened the folder and slid the first stack of papers across the table. Bank transfers, credit card charges, loan documents, printed emails. My mother's hand actually froze halfway toward the page. My father's expression hardened when he saw the lender letter. My sister looked from one document to the next, then quickly away. "I know about the charges," I said. "I know about the loans. I know about the forged signature. And I know you were spacing out emergencies so I would keep saying yes." My mother's face drained of color. "Claire, listen to me," she whispered, suddenly switching tones. "You are overwhelmed right now. You are putting things together in the worst possible way." "No," I said, keeping my voice level. "I am finally putting them together the right way." My father shoved the papers back toward me. "You cannot prove anything." "Actually," I said, "I can prove quite a lot." I tapped the loan application. "This signature is not mine." Then I tapped the email chain. "And this is not a misunderstanding. This is strategy." My sister finally snapped. "Oh my God, do you hear yourself? We are your family. We needed help. Sorry, we are not as perfect and cold as you." There it was. Not guilt. Not shame. anger that I had stopped playing my role. My mother reached for me again, eyes filling on command. Please do not do this. We love you. Whatever this looks like, it is not what you think. I stared at her and realized how many times that exact voice had moved me before. How many times I had mistaken performance for pain. You did not need a daughter, I said quietly. You needed a payroll account. My father's chair scraped hard against the floor as he stood up. A few people at nearby tables looked over. You ungrateful little... He started, then stopped when he noticed the attention. My sister yanked out her phone, already typing. I knew before she even lifted her eyes what she was doing. She was going online. She was going to get ahead of the story the only way people like her knew how. My mother whispered, "If you go outside this family with this, you will destroy us." I held her gaze. You should have thought about that before you built a system around me. Then I closed the folder and stood. Everything I found has already been sent to my lawyer. That landed harder than the video had. My father went still. My mother blinked like she had not heard me correctly. My sister actually laughed, but it sounded forced now. You would really do that to us? She asked. I looked at all three of them and felt something cold settle into place. You did it to me first. I walked out before they could regroup, before the tears could start, before my father could turn loud and vicious in the parking lot. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already lighting up again. My sister had posted an Instagram story about fake loyalty and selfish people who abandon family when things get hard. My father texted that I was making a mistake I would regret for the rest of my life. My mother left a voicemail so soft and broken it would have fooled me a week earlier. I listened to none of it twice, because for the first time, I understood exactly what was happening. They were not defending the truth. They were fighting for control. And once they realized guilt was no longer working on me, I knew they were about to get uglier than ever. They got uglier fast. By the time I woke up the next morning, my sister's Instagram story had turned into a full performance. She never used my name, but she did not need to. She posted vague lines about betrayal, about people who act generous just so they can weaponize it later, about how some family members only care about money and control. A few people who knew us well enough to guess started watching my account. One old family friend sent me a message that said, "I hope whatever happened can be worked out privately." That was the first sign their version of the story was already spreading. My father took a different route. He sent me 3 texts in a row, each one meaner than the last. He said I was humiliating my own family over paperwork I did not understand. He said I had always thought too highly of myself since getting a corporate job. Then he told me if my mother's health got worse because of this stress, it would be on me. My mother, of course, leaned all the way into that script. Around noon, I got a call from an unknown number. A woman said my mother had collapsed and was being taken in for emergency evaluation. My whole body reacted before my mind did. I was already grabbing my keys when something stopped me. The woman had not identified the hospital. She had not even said my mother's full name. I asked where she was calling from, and there was a pause, just a little too long to feel real. Then she gave me the name of a hospital 20 minutes away. I hung up and called the main line myself. No patient by that name had been admitted. I stood there in my kitchen with my hand wrapped so tightly around my phone it hurt, and I realized they had graduated from manipulation to theater. They were not trying to repair anything. They were trying to trigger me back into obedience. That was the moment the last bit of hesitation left me. On Monday, I hired an attorney named Megan Cross, a sharp, controlled woman with the kind of face that never changed when people lied to her. I brought her everything I had: the saved video, the bank transfers, the unauthorized charges, the email chain, the loan applications with signatures that were not mine. She did not interrupt much while I explained it, but when she finally looked up from the stack, she said, "You did the right thing by documenting first and speaking second." That sentence calmed me more than any sympathy could have. For the first time since the video, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. Megan helped me move quickly. We froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. We disputed the fraudulent accounts. We contacted the lenders and requested copies of every application tied to my Social Security number. She told me to change every password I had ever reused, lock down my bank access, set alerts on all my accounts, and stop replying to my family completely. Then she drafted a formal cease and desist letter covering harassment, defamation, and any further attempt to use my identity for financial gain. It was sent by certified mail to all 3 of them. The effect was immediate. My father stopped texting me directly and started leaving angry voicemails instead, as if speaking instead of writing would protect him. My mother mailed me a handwritten letter filled with trembling apologies and lines about how no mother deserves to be treated like a criminal by her own daughter. My sister called from a number I did not recognize and tried a new tone altogether. Soft voice, fake tears. She said she had not realized things had gone that far, that Dad handled most of the money stuff, that she had just been caught up in family stress and said stupid things in that video. Then, when I stayed silent, her voice changed. She said I was overreacting. She said no judge would care about a few family loans and some online purchases. She said if I dragged this out, everyone would see what kind of person I really was. I ended the call without saying a word and forwarded the recording to Megan. A week later, the lenders began responding. 2 of the accounts were placed under fraud review. One requested a signature comparison. Another confirmed the phone number on file was not mine. Every piece of official confirmation hit me in a strange way. It was validating, yes, but it was also brutal, because each letter proved that what had happened was not just emotional betrayal, it was administrative, systematic, deliberate. Somewhere along the line, my family had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a usable set of numbers. Around that same time, the stress started bleeding into the rest of my life. I was still doing my main job, but I gave up a weekend consulting gig because I could not focus well enough to trust my own work. I slept badly, ate when I remembered, jumped every time my phone lit up. Megan noticed before I said anything and suggested I talk to someone who was not connected to the case. I started therapy the following week, partly because I knew I needed help, and partly because I was tired of carrying around the shame they had trained into me. In those early sessions, I kept repeating the same sentence. I should have seen it sooner. My therapist asked me why people always expect the person being manipulated to have perfect clarity, while the people doing the manipulating are allowed to hide behind family and stress and need. I did not have an answer for that. What I did have by then was something much more useful than guilt. I had paperwork. I had timelines. I had proof. And every day that passed, my fear of what they might do next got a little smaller than my determination to make sure they never got to do it again. Viet Phan saw thought for a couple of seconds. For a few weeks, things went strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet in the way a house gets quiet before a storm hits. The formal letters had rattled them, and the fraud disputes were moving forward, so the non-stop calls slowed down. But people like my family did not back off because they understood boundaries. They backed off when they were trying to think of a better angle. I knew that. I just did not know what the next angle would be. Then my sister texted me from a new number on a Thursday afternoon and asked if we could meet. She said she did not want money, did not want to argue, did not want to talk about lawyers. She said she just wanted one chance to apologize face to face because everything had gotten so ugly and she hated how things ended at the coffee shop. I read the message 3 times. Part of me wanted to delete it, Another part of me, the older, softer part that had spent years translating other people's selfishness into pain I felt responsible for, wondered if this was the first real crack in her act. I did not trust her, but I agreed to meet anyway. Not because I believed her, because by then I had learned that when people are desperate, they eventually show you the truth if you stay calm long enough. We met at a hotel lobby cafe in downtown Seattle, a place full of business travelers, security cameras, and too many witnesses for anyone to cause a scene. She arrived wearing a cream coat and a strained smile, looking polished in the exact way people do when they want forgiveness to come to them faster than accountability. For the first few minutes, she played the role well. She said she had been angry for years and had started treating cruelty like a joke because everyone else in the family did it. She said Dad always made everything about money and Mom always made everything about guilt. And somewhere in the middle, she stopped seeing how ugly it had become. She even cried a little, just enough to make it look uncontrolled. Then she said the line she clearly thought would reach me. She said, "Claire, I miss my sister." I almost laughed when I heard it because that was the point, was it not? She missed the version of me who paid, explained, forgave, and stayed. Still, I let her keep talking. I wanted to see how far she would go. She leaned in and lowered her voice and said she wanted to help me fix this before it got worse for everyone. Not fix what they had done, fix the consequences. She said if I would just tell my lawyer I had overreacted and stop pushing the fraud claims, Dad could handle the rest quietly. That was the first time the mask slipped. Not all the way, but enough. I looked at her for a second and asked, "Dad can handle what exactly?" Her face tightened. She said, "You know what I mean." "No," I said. "I really do not. Explain it to me." For the first time since she sat down, she looked uncomfortable. She glanced away, then reached for her coffee with the wrong hand, and that was when I noticed the phone. It was partly hidden inside the open side pocket of her purse, camera facing out, screen dark but angled in a way that made no sense unless it was recording. I stared at it for one full second, then back at her. Everything inside me went cold and calm at the same time. Even now, after the letters, after the evidence, after the public humiliation, she had not come there to tell the truth. She had come there to manufacture a new one. I leaned back in my chair and said, "Are you recording this?" She froze. It was slight, but it was there. Then she gave me an offended look and said, "Of course not." I reached across the table, took the phone from her bag before she could stop me, and turned the screen on. The recording timer was running. She actually had the nerve to look embarrassed, as if I had caught her in something small and awkward instead of something calculated and disgusting. "Give that back," she snapped. I held it just out of her reach and felt something inside me settle for good. The worst part was not that she had used me for years. The worst part was that she still believed I was stupid enough to fall for one more performance. I set the phone on the table between us and stood up. "You do not miss your sister," I said quietly. "You miss access." Her mouth opened, then closed. A couple of people nearby glanced over, but I kept my voice even. "You came here hoping I would say something emotional you could twist, or something uncertain you could hand to Dad and his lawyer and use against me. That is not an apology. That is just the same scam in nicer clothes." She stood up too then, anger finally beating strategy. "You think you are so much better than us," she hissed. "No," I said. "I just finally stopped being useful to you." I left the phone on the table and walked out before she could recover. By the time I got to the parking garage, I had already forwarded the details of the meeting to Megan, along with a summary of what happened and the fact that my sister had attempted to record me deceptively during an active fraud dispute. Megan replied within an hour, "Do not meet with any of them again without legal notice or a third party present. We will add this to the file." That same week, things began to fall apart for them in ways no dramatic speech ever could have accomplished. One of the lenders closed its review in my favor and removed the account tied to my name. Another sent notice that the application contained inconsistencies serious enough to support the fraud claim. A collection notice linked to one of the disputed balances was redirected away from my file. For the first time in months, the paper trail was not just exposing damage, it was reversing it. Word also started getting around, not because I posted anything, but because facts travel differently when they are attached to certified letters and lender findings instead of family gossip. People who had quietly watched my sister's posts stopped reacting. A family friend who had once urged me to keep it private sent a short apology and said she had not known the full story. My father's messages, once loud and threatening, shifted into something tighter and more desperate. He left a voicemail saying they were under pressure and I had made everything impossible. My mother sent another letter, this one less wounded and more frantic, saying bills were piling up and my father might lose the truck if I did not stop all of this. I read that line twice, not because I felt sorry for them, but because I finally understood what justice looked like in this story. It did not look like me screaming in their faces. It looked like consequences arriving where my money used to. By the end of that month, my father had taken extra driving work to stay afloat. My mother picked up more hours at a retail job she used to complain was beneath her. My sister, who had acted for years like stability, was optional as long as someone else could be guilted into funding her chaos, moved back into my parents' house after falling behind on her own payments. None of it was dramatic in the way movies like to be dramatic. No one collapsed in public. No one begged on my doorstep. It was better than that. It was real. Their lives got smaller the moment they could no longer build them on top of mine. And once I saw that happen, I knew I was finally close to something that had felt impossible for a long time. Not revenge exactly. Something quieter, something cleaner. I was getting my life back. Viet Phan Bei Quang Nam Tram Tu thought for a second. 8 months after the night my sister accidentally sent me that video, I signed the papers for a small condo just outside Bellevue. It was not huge and it was not fancy, but every inch of it felt honest. The kitchen was narrow, the floors creaked in 2 places, and the second bedroom was barely big enough for a desk and a bookshelf. But when I walked through that front door, I felt something I had not felt in years. Safety. Not the fake kind I used to buy with money, hoping if I gave enough, loved enough, fixed enough, I would finally earn peace inside my own family. I mean real safety. The kind that comes from knowing no one has a key, no one has access to your accounts, and no one gets to turn your compassion into a business model ever again. By then, the fraud disputes had mostly been resolved in my favor. The accounts that were never mine were removed. My credit had recovered. My savings had started growing for the first time in years because the money I earned was finally staying in my life instead of disappearing into someone else's crisis of the week. I changed jobs too. The stress of everything that happened forced me to look at my whole life differently, and a few months after the case began, I accepted a new position with better pay and healthier hours. For the first time in a long time, I was not living in reaction mode. I was building something. Slowly, carefully, for myself. I started running on Saturday mornings with a local group. Even though I was terrible at it at first, I volunteered twice a month at a community center, helping older adults set up phones, email accounts, and video calls with their families. That ended up teaching me more than therapy alone ever could. It showed me that helping people is not the problem. Love is not the problem. Generosity is not the problem. The problem is what happens when guilt gets dressed up as love and you start calling exploitation kindness. A few weeks after I moved in, my sister called me from a number I did not recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. Not warm, not exactly sincere, but smaller. She told me she was sorry. She said she knew she had crossed lines she could not defend anymore. She said she understood if I never wanted a relationship again, but she needed me to know that she had been wrong. I listened without interrupting. And when she finished, I told her something I had practiced saying long before that call ever came. I said I could wish her healing without reopening the door she helped break down. I said forgiveness and access were not the same thing. I said I hoped she built a life she did not need to steal from anyone else to maintain. Then I ended the call. No screaming, no dramatic final speech, just a boundary, spoken clearly. That was the moment I realized how much I had changed. The old version of me believed love meant staying available no matter how badly people treated you. The woman I am now knows better. Real love does not keep score, does not schedule fake emergencies, does not laugh about your generosity over drinks, and does not panic only when the money stops. Real love has respect in it. It has honesty in it. It has limits. If this story taught me anything, it is that boundaries are not cruelty, and saying no does not make you selfish. Sometimes saying no is the first honest thing you have said in years. Sometimes the most important person you save is yourself. I used to think losing my family would break me. What actually broke me was the illusion that they had ever loved me in a healthy way. And once that illusion was gone, I could finally see what freedom looked like. It looked quiet. It looked earned. It looked like peace. If you have ever been made to feel guilty for protecting yourself, listen to me carefully. You are not heartless for stepping back from people who only show up when they need something. You are not wrong for questioning patterns that leave you drained, anxious, and ashamed. And you are not weak for loving deeply. You just have to learn that love without boundaries is the easiest thing in the world for the wrong people to weaponize. The hardest lesson I learned was also the most valuable one. Family is not defined by blood, history, or obligation. Family is defined by care that does not require your silence, your fear, or your sacrifice to survive. Once I understood that, I stopped mourning the role they wanted me to play and started building a life that actually belonged to me. And that, more than any argument, any legal letter, or any consequence they faced, was the most satisfying ending of all.
At Revenge Argon, our team works hard to create meaningful, engaging stories that are crafted with care and purpose. We are committed to making it clear that these are fictional stories, created to share educational lessons, valuable insights, and thought-provoking messages with our viewers. After hearing this story, which character stood out to you the most, and why? Also, what kind of family drama or revenge story would you like to hear next on the channel?